Welcome to episode 10 of Uncharted, Your Sidekick for Life. Today, our special guest joining us is Holly Deshields. Holly is not only the director of consulting at McGuire Woods Consulting in Austin, Texas, but she's also a seasoned lobbyist with a passion for politics that dates back to her childhood. In this episode, Dan Dillard, Dr. Leon Vanstone, and myself, Natalie Payton, speak to Holly to learn about her experiences in the world of lobbying and hear her insights about the political landscape. Let's learn more about Holly's path and find out what motivates her in such a challenging field. Special thanks to our Gen Z correspondent, Anna Schmidt, and our Gen Z contributors, who include Samarth, who talks about how universities are not properly preparing students for the rise of AI and how it could affect their future careers, and Mahi, who talks about her concerns with the economy and the job market. Let's have a listen.
Welcome to Uncharted.
Actually, no, wait.
You
Sorry, I had to.
I'm going to do that when you're coding.
Okay.
Right in the
right.
in the depth of
Hang
your,
on, actually,
he's
no,
like
no,
he's
no,
like
there is-
he's like
there is
and
something
what
I
I'm
want
going
to
to do. I'm going to slap your keyboard, your laptop down, and
Actually, I wanted to call
Yeah.
and get it out of the way.
welcome to Uncharted, your sidekick for life. What are we? Episode 10 now.
10 double
Wow.
digits.
Love it.
It's like a train, right? It started off slow, and then it's like 2 or 3 a week. Let's get this
Yeah.
out. So
Now it's 5 miles long.
there you go. Yes, it is.
Trying to get across
Trying
the
to get
grass.
across it.
Nice.
Not happening. Let's do some brief intros.
Hey, everybody. I'm Natalie Payton. I am an actor, comic, and podcast person, Natalie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Leon Vanstone, rocket scientist, storyteller, entrepreneur, and co-founder of Founding Up.
Hi there. I'm Holly Deshields with McGuire Woods Consulting, and I'm a director of consulting and a lobbyist and work for a law firm.
And I'm Dan Dillard, your co-host here at Uncharted and also co-founder of Founding Up, among other things. And we'll get into that. You guys already know about that stuff.
So many hats.
So many hats. Let's see which one of my hats are. All right, today we're the host.
Today we're hosts.
Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so intrigued. We had one of your business partners on yesterday and learned some, not everything that we need to know about lobbying and the work that you do, but I want to get into your history. And as you know, we're going to talk to some of our correspondents that have questions. We'll answer those things as well. But also, I think the formatting, as we look at the podcast, we want to go deeper into what our mentors do and mentors have done. So let's talk about where you're at now and what you love about what you do now, and then we'll kind of go backwards from there.
Okay. Sounds great. So politics has been in my blood since I was a child, but what I love about it is the relationships and building upon those relationships. We really are human capital is all we have to sell, and that's our reputation, relationships, networking capabilities, and just having respect for anybody on either side of the aisle and really doing what's best for our clients. And our clients are very varied, and that's probably my favorite thing about my job is I'm not pigeonholed into one subject.
Right. What was it about? Well, why don't we just start from the very beginning? Let's start off with how you got started from school to like how this
Sure.
path went. So,
So again, politics has always been in my blood. It's nothing that I grew up with. My family is very apolitical. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a used car salesman. But I just really loved it from day one. I remember in 4th grade, I put this is going to definitely date myself, but I put a poll on the election day on the outside door of our classroom of if people were going to vote for Clayton Williams for governor or Ann Richards. And let's be clear, a lot of 4th graders don't
right.
even know who's running for governor. So at that point in time, my teachers were like, this is something that you're definitely interested in.
That's
So
really cool.
yeah, it was a lot of
It's cool that you identified it that early.
100%. And from there, I was, always did student body elections and things
Was
of
it
that
public
nature.
service? Was it just change?
I think it was the change, making change,
Mhm.
positive change.
Okay.
And really having, a stake in the game. If you don't vote, you can't bitch. So
I love that.
I like that.
I mean,
That's
it's
so
a very
good.
true statement, right?
Yeah.
So I just felt like that was always something that was important. So I got my first job when I was 14, worked in a dancewear store, and I worked at an insurance agency. I worked for a day trading firm. This was all 14 to 18, my high school years, as well as being very involved in my school and volunteering and philanthropy and all of that good stuff. But decided to come to UT. Again, loved it. There was state capital, but I bleed burnt orange, always have. So I started here.
Look at her.
Yeah, I know.
Look at her gesture.
I very much appreciate it. But September, my freshman year at UT, I had just joined a sorority, and it was my first sorority meeting on a Monday morning. And I had asked one of the older girls if she knew of an internship or anything at the Capitol. And she said, actually, you can take mine. So I went with her that Friday and met her people. I ended up with a state senator for 12 years, started as an intern, worked in every position in the office, was his chief of staff the last 6, and was the youngest and only female chief of staff at that point in time. So loved working for him. His family is my family. Still talk to them very regularly, and knew after the experience I had with him that I didn't want to go work for another politician. Like he spoiled me rotten, and I didn't want to leave with a bad taste in my mouth. So with the firm that I'm currently with, I joined them in 2012. And I had worked on a bill with one of my colleagues in Virginia, but a Texas legislative bill. And they just said, always come talk to them if I was ever going to leave the Capitol. So technically in my adult career, I've had 2 jobs. One with Senator Jackson and one with McGuire Woods. And that's over the span of 25 years.
That is so cool. This is like a unicorn, people, right here.
Yeah.
Because, always talk about, I believe every one of us has a spark or a calling, right? It just takes us a while to figure out what that is, right? For some, it's in the 4th grade. It's like, I know what I want to do. And that's really, really rare and unique. Most people, at least that we've talked to or experienced, you're 30, 40, you're still trying to figure it out. 50, you're still trying to figure it out. I mean, it's
absolutely,
it's this path that changes. So clarity early on is really cool. But audience, Gen Z, what we've identified, where we want to help is those individuals that are lost, like trying to figure out how does this work? How do I get to the next place? Like what keeps you up at night as far as if you're Gen Z trying to figure out life, right? Because it is a tough space.
Absolutely. I think, you have to be willing to take risks, go and experience what you think you might like to decide if you actually do like it. Just as recently as last week, I had a 18-year-old just coming out of high school, just follow me around for a day. And her parents just called me out of the clear blue and said, can you pick a day and have Campbell come with you? I was like, absolutely. So she showed up at my house at 8 a.m. She was with me till 7 p.m. She was like, okay, you can't really explain what you do until you experience it. Yeah. And it really, I think, impassioned her, and she loved every minute of it and said she wants to, see where her road takes her, but would like to intern at the Capitol and kind of get into that fold. So I just think you have to be willing to ask people about what they do and take the risk to go follow them.
Right. Day in the life of your life.
Which day?
Yeah. On a Tuesday, yeah.
A Tuesday. So many conference calls, just like everybody else has, but it's usually with clients. Mondays and Tuesdays, I try to get all my client calls out of the way so I know what my path forward is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to execute those action items. And we typically circle back around with our clients at least once a week. So I also have a 10-year-old son. I'm a single mom.
Awesome.
And he just turned 10 on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
So excited. It's the 10th episode.
Yeah. There you
10th
go.
birthday.
Stars are leaning.
But yes, and he's number one in my life.
Right.
But if he's not number one, then everything else falls apart. So usually it's, getting him situated, getting him on a schedule, and then I just work my schedule around that. But my time is precious with him. So especially during the summer, take a little bit more flexibility. But during the school year, I just make sure that Mondays and Tuesdays I'm always with him. Wednesdays and Thursdays he's with his dad. So I kind of schedule accordingly. But it's a logistics nightmare, to be honest with you, but it's super fun. Every hour is different. I love problem solving. I love having little fires pop up as much as I don't at the time. But
really, it's a career in the fire brigade.
It is 100%.
And you work well under pressure, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, pressure's whatever you think it is. I mean, I don't feel pressure a lot of the time, which I don't know, maybe.
I want to know about that. Like, how did you get to that point?
It was many moons ago too. I think I was working for Senator Jackson, and somebody just came up to me, and I think we had a staff of 15. It was bill filing deadline or something. Big things were just happening, and somebody walked up and they're like, "You're not curing cancer." It's like, You're exactly right. This is all still going to be here.
Right.
And there are still ways to have workarounds and backfill. And, it's all about the process and knowing how to work the process.
Yeah.
So if I'm not curing cancer, I think everything else can just kind of fall into place.
My business coach, Becky, we had her on our first
Yeah.
episode. Life coach, not business coach, but she frames it nicely as like, we're all on this planet that spins every single day around a solar system that spins around other galaxies that spin.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going anywhere. It's just round and round and round. And it does put things into perspective. It's like tomorrow's a new day, and there's a different perspective to that, which brings anxiety down. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it.
Except if you consider the very end of the universe, which is, of course, the entropy death of
course,
everything,
of course.
which I would say is quite anxiety-inducing.
It
but
is. And a lot of
thankfully
things
it's
you don't.
That is so
hundreds of
optimistic.
billions
Yeah.
of years ago. So,
Well, I feel like
my one contribution.
Can't argue with
Goodbye.
science.
Mic drop.
Yeah, right. Spinning for now.
And actually, a mentor of mine taught me a couple of years ago. She's like, we are always she's like, picture your life as 3 bowling pins in the air and you're the juggler. There's always going to be one in the air, but you're always going to have your hand on 2. There's no way to catch all 3 and have them all still moving. So just focus on the 2 that are in your hand, and that one will come down and one will go up. And so for me, that just really sums up personal, professional, all of the things in my life of where the balance is. It's not all going to be balanced.
I like that visual
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
a lot.
Good. That leads me to 2 questions that are curious. 10 years old. What grade is?
He is going into 4th.
Has he figured out what he wants to do?
He wants to be a professional athlete or a lobbyist.
Aw.
And that is going to be in a magazine that he's spotlighted in next month.
Oh, wow.
Aw, that's so cool.
The answers were hilarious.
That is cool.
But yes,
Well,
but his dad is a lobbyist, I'm a lobbyist, and his stepmom is a lobbyist. So
Oh, wow. So, yeah.
There you go. Okay, cool. And the second question that in this conversation that we were chatting about is your mentors. Like, what
Mhm.
mentorship have you had, and what impact has it had on you?
a lot, I think when I worked inside the Capitol, just the people that I looked up to are the ones that have always helped me the most. I would say, there's definitely some females in my field that I've looked to and make phone calls to, and they've helped me guide through the process. And my field is very male driven, male dominant, but that has never really crossed my mind.
Right.
I don't really care.
Right.
And I think that comes from a lot of the women that had set the tone
Mhm.
early on, and like, we're all the same.
Right.
Be smart,
Mhm.
follow the money.
Follow
Hey,
the money.
There you go. Follow the money. But it has impacted your life. Making decisions.
100%. I wouldn't be where I am today without the people that I've surrounded myself by and looked to for professional and personal advice.
It's what we both found in kind of different aspects. And I, through building the magazine and interviewing all these entrepreneurs, it really kind of, even at that point, I was 43 when I started that. Even at 43,
Whippersnapper.
even at 43, my life changed at that point, because it felt like, oh, what have I been doing for the last 20 years? I've been in a career. I was in finance, I've got a financial planning firm, and helped hundreds of families. And it was kind of like, felt like I was in this life, but just in one box, right?
Right.
And then started the magazine. All of a sudden, ooh, it was kind of like
Unlocked everything.
black and white to color. That's what it meant to me. And in having those discussions with over 300 entrepreneurs, just like ideas kind of spawned out of that, and life changed, and just a whole different world. So for me, it was such a huge impact. I know for Leon as well. I don't think we've talked fully on the show about the things that you've experienced.
Yeah,
teaching in
I really
university.
got to see that from both sides of the mirror, right? The mentorship piece in some regards, right? Because you're there watching what happens to hundreds of people when you give them, open access to.
Well, we share that story. I don't know if we shared that story on.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard it.
Well, because I started the Rocket Lab, and
Worked at UT.
Worked at UT, founded this rocket lab. The point in the rocket lab was to, undergrads would come to UT and UT would say, come to UT, be a rocket scientist. But there was no rocket science 101. There was no clear, repeatable roadmap that would, if you clearly just took the courses and got a decent grade that you could just go through and then get your job, right? So be the change you want to see in the world, sort of like the magazine. I started a rocket lab. You say casually, I suppose. And we managed to scrounge together at $1 million, and we got Firefly Aerospace in on it to help because, it's really hard to emphasize just how theoretical building a rocket isn't really. The design is 1/3 of it. You have to do all this testing, all this other stuff. It's all really hard, and it's complicated, and it isn't theoretical. There's no book. It's basically fancy air plumbing, and if you get anything wrong, it all explodes. And so Firefly came in and provided an incredible amount of mentorship, mostly to the students because they were the ones who were going to be doing most of this. And, ironically, I started a rocket lab. I didn't do a lot of rocket science. When you're in a leadership position, you do a lot of leading, but you don't do any real work, as it were. And so I watched what happens to hundreds of kids that just had this unfettered access, both in terms of in sort of peer mentorship to each other, they would help. But then also, of course, experts and people would very kindly volunteer their time. And this comes back to something we've said before, which is incredibly knowledgeable, important people will quite happily surrender time because a lot of them recognize the sort of opportunities they've had. Tom Marcusic would come and give guest lectures. He founded Firefly, now, a multi-billion-dollar rocket company. And he would come in and guest lecture along with other people. And, they were under the hammer. They had to launch this rocket and they were still coming in to lecture. So, and it was just, you really got to see, firsthand. And also you get some mentorship back. Even if you're a mentor, you end up sort of also learning too. That nothing is one way, raising a child is a two-way thing, man. They teach you teach them, but they teach you. And it's the same with all these students. And it was just, and it was really what taught me what the real, much like your experience. And I think that's why we founding up, of course, but really gave me this just really vivid, rich, lived experience of what mentorship could do. Kids would be failing at a UT that would turn everything around. And okay, they didn't leave with a good grade, but man, some of them now build rocket stands for prestigious rocket companies with terrible GPAs because of the, sure, and again, life's failure tolerant. You think you're failing. You're not failing. You just weren't cut out for academia. That wasn't the point. You had a different spark, as you said. So, that was my lived experience of mentorship.
I think one of the most important things about mentorship is being able to ask any question, and no questions are stupid. Just be able to throw anything out there, and that is totally fine.
Yeah.
Well, it's that vulnerability that I think a lot of people, because there's this, and we've talked about this fake it till you make it, kind of thought process. That is, and you have a nice way of looking at this fake it till you make it approach. But I think that fear of not being who others think you might be, then you're afraid to ask the question. And in reality, we're all human. We all understand. We've all been there. It's all being vulnerable and being open and like, hey, I don't get this. Can you help me? And then immediately the next human is going to be like, yeah, let's do it. We're built to teach. Throughout history, we've taught through storytelling. Is just that all that knowledge goes from one place to another. So that's really, really cool.
Well, and I tell everybody on our team, and there's 15 of us, from the intern to leadership, we can all be called janitor and we can all be called governor. I don't care. Just let's do what gets the job done, and everybody is on an equal playing field, and there are no stupid questions. I'd rather you ask a question than not, and then we have to go clean it up a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions, and then we'll jump into this. I am curious, though, as far as like, what are some of the most exciting things you've worked on or been able to see throughout your career in government and politics that you're like, oh, that affected real change? Or are there any moments like that you look back and say, I'm proud of that, or I just kind of want to give the audience a glimpse of like the power of what lobbying can do for a cause?
Sure. Trying to think of some of my favorite things to work on. We represent the Entertainment Software Association, which is all the video game publishers. And so for the last 10 plus years, we've been seeking state incentive funding to grow the industry here in the state of Texas.
Mhm.
And we are now the second one behind Washington State. Last year, we were able to get the industry about almost $200 million. And that's for film, commercial, all production. So video games just have a piece of it, but that helps drive our economy. And it is such a high paying workforce straight out of college. They start at, their jobs are $100,000, $120,000 walking out the door. And it doesn't have to be college. It can be tech and anything, trade schools, design schools, anything of that nature. But I don't know, that's very important work to me because you see the benefits of it in our communities. And Austin, especially, we are one of the largest development communities in the country, if not so much the world. So that's been a fun one to watch. I do a lot of work for Walgreens and one of my passion projects, which is very important to the company as well, but immunizations for children and allowing pharmacists to continue doing so. So during COVID, pharmacists were allowed to immunize children 3 and up. However, that emergency order is going away at the end of this year. So we've been setting the groundwork for the last couple of years for pharmacists to continue to be able to immunize, and we'll have to pass a bill, hopefully during this next legislative session, for that to continue. But I think it's just access to care. It's so important that families have that option. They don't have to schedule an appointment with their physician.
Right.
They can go at 5 o'clock after they get off work to get
More
their child
efficient. Yeah.
immunized. So, it's not little. I mean, it's nuanced issues, but very important issues that do run your daily life. We do a lot of work for City of Fort Worth, City of Dallas, and those are really, local issues driven by their city leadership. And it can be anything from, working on lowering property taxes to they need a bill passed to be able to do a zoning situation to make sure the fire department can get to this neighborhood. I mean, you just never really know what's going to pop up. Yeah. Right. So our job just really runs the gamut of a little bit of everything. We have after Hurricane Beryl, we have a disaster recovery company that has prepositioned to help in that aspect.
You had some nonprofit things you were talking about as well, like foster care and
yes. So one of my other favorite ones is the St. Vincent de Paul Charitable Pharmacy. They're based out of Dallas, and they provide medications for chronically ill patients that are Texas residents and not insured. And they provide those medications for free throughout the state, delivered to your house. Wow. And so we are seeking them more funding so they can expand their program. But they deliver about 800,000 prescriptions to the chronically ill, which keeps them out of the hospitals and out of our ERs. And so also a passion project, fun one to work on.
Nice. I love that.
That's really cool.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that, when you hear the word lobbyist, personally, it often comes with this negative connotation of these lobbyists did this and they passed us thing, and this is all this negative
stuff. And I've been called pond scum, out of the clear blue, sitting at a hotel restaurant. And this gentleman asked me what I did for a living. It's like, you're just pond scum. I was like,
pond scum, though.
So could you not just keep that to yourself? Why did you actually have to say that out loud?
But also,
I, on the other hand, am across the pond scum.
Works out.
Pond
Never been disputed.
But I think it's great to enlighten people with what the job does and what the benefits are. Right? There's all kinds of good things that can come out of it.
Absolutely, and I'd say 90% are the good things that come out of it. Now, what you see on the news and what you see in movies,
aren't lobbyists to thank for telling the world that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, or for the Got Milk campaign?
We are public relations people.
Okay.
I mean, top to bottom, we work with grassroots, grass tops. We do crisis communications, strategic communications, all of those things. And yes, you're exactly right. It is taking that little seed and giving it,
publicizing it. Giving it.
Sounds like it's just you have the relationships to make things flow more efficiently.
Absolutely. And communicate effectively with people that are going to be out in their communities talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Very cool. All right, let's jump into a couple of these questions. You selected some good ones here. Let's talk. This first one is AI career, because this is a hot topic at the moment.
It's a hot topic with everybody, and I've been talking about it a lot lately.
How will AI affect you in your future careers?
Well, I can answer how AI might affect us in our future careers. As an EC student, AI is honestly everywhere. And many people see ChatGPT or things like Cloud taking over the literary space, where it just writes most of your assignments for you. But at ECE majors, most people don't see the AI that's taking over technical spaces, that's really automating things in the background. Um, I think the university prepares us for things like more popular AIs like ChatGPT and all. They say sometimes you can use it for assignments, sometimes you can't. But there's really a lack of teaching us about technical AIs and machine learning. That's a lot of things that you'll get into coursework way at the end of your years, but it's not really a generalized focus for many students like that.
This hits on so many points. I had an article sent to us by a professor advisor that's working with our company. And the article says the new data says that 70% of students feel like they're not getting, they need this AI training and it's not happening.
I mean, we saw that when we lectured at A&M, remember? And I asked the class how many, there were about 100 students. And I said, who here, put your hand up, feels that you're being well prepared for, AI in the workplace? And not a single one of them raised their hand. So.
Mm-hmm.
And it's everywhere. You're not escaping it at this point.
And employers want it. I mean, they're like screaming for it.
Well, and we come across, I've got 2 clients that are very heavily involved in AI, and we've had some meetings over the last few weeks educating legislators in their offices about AI and trying to take the stigma off of it, because
Right.
people don't recognize that it is, not all people recognize that it is already everywhere.
Right.
But when you're going into a state agencies or a business and you're talking about generative AI, and the immediate response, especially with the older baby boomer generation, is that's going to take away our jobs.
Right.
Well, it's not going to take away your job. It's actually going to help you do your job more efficiently and effectively.
Right.
And with the Gen Zers in school, or kids in school right now, what they are going to have to learn to do better and more, or better than our generation for sure, but editing and fact checking.
Mhm.
Like, their job just went from all the papers we used to write, doesn't happen anymore. But you got to be a very good editor and a very good fact checker
Mhm.
to make sure that all of that is correct and you're submitting the right information. But I think that that's really where kids need to focus these days as well.
The fact checking is going to be important.
There's an AI for that.
Yeah. Well, I start to think about now how good AI is as far as being able to imitate voice, and there's whole companies that they're doing that. So, like, what do you believe?
Mhm.
Right? So the fact checking is going to be a whole new industry in itself. Like it's going from like 0 to 100
Right.
as far as what needs. Is that true? Because it's what perception is reality. If that's what's being perceived, and it gets out in social media, and all of a sudden now you're having a bigger. It takes the social media issue up significantly notches.
100%.
So this is a valid concern. It's a concern on both sides. We met with professors at A&M, and they get bombarded by all these companies that are creating AI things, and they don't know what, like, it's like, can you imagine, like, not knowing, doing something for, the last decades a certain way. All of a sudden you've got all these emails coming in with all these AI, I can do this, I can do this, I can replace your text and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, what do? I have no idea. And so there is this bit of a, for institutions, bit of a climbing uphill. Like, how do I figure this out? How do I create something that's most efficient for benefiting both the university and also the students?
Well, it's just, I mean, I guess in our generation is also the equivalent to the internet. I mean, when I came into college, we could do email, but no one really understood the power that was going to take on, and how, I mean, everything that it has created.
Yeah.
So I just feel like they're on parallel paths.
And what you pointed out, we said this in the show yesterday, is like, how long it takes. I think Kwame had this comment yesterday. It just takes so long for government to kind of get on the same page. We're still kind of arguing whether
Right.
the internet's a utility or not, and that's like 20 years ago. So
That
that's
sailed.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
gone. So this is even faster.
Yes.
AI is even faster. It's going to do so many more things. So it's a valid question. But to me, I think where he's at is like, the underlying question that I hear in what was said there was, I just want to be prepared for the future. And I'm not sure that universities are doing that for us now, which begs the question, like, what are we paying $100,000 to an institution for if I'm not prepared for the future? Because that's the goal. And so that preparation, which is a two-sided coin, is something that we've got to address and face and kind of move forward on. So it's that reskilling. And I think the future, I think AI also will do what you just said. It takes a lot of the knowledge and puts it in your fingertips, and you just ask better questions. So what are the skills that are going to be needed? That's the question we need. What are the skills that are going to be needed in the next 5 years, next 10 years,
Next year.
next
I
year?
mean,
Yeah, that's a lot of the training is knowing what to ask and how to ask it, because that will drastically change the answer that it gives you. Or specifically, I'm thinking of like the creative part, how to write what you want to see when, like Dolly, for example. If you don't write it properly, you're going to get back something that's like you can't
Right.
understand it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
So that is something that I would like to get better at, is knowing how to type something in to get an image back.
We need to
You know
get
what I
really
mean?
good at Jeopardy,
Yeah. What is? Yeah, exactly.
asking the right question. All right, let's jump into the next question.
It's probably an AI for that.
What keeps you up at night right now besides school and like the environment or the economy or relationships? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I would say probably the economy, because it's just so hard to find a job right now. Like I know people who graduated, um, with bachelors, and they're having a tough time finding something. Just like friends of mine, even people who've been working for so long, it's hard. I don't know. I'm not sure if like companies are lying about these positions being available or not. I don't know. I really don't know.
Makes you wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just getting so expensive, like cost of living, especially in Austin. So a lot of people are like moving back with their parents and things like that ever since the pandemic. So I think things are getting better, but I don't know.
You can hear the anxiety. Poor thing.
absolutely.
And it's a real issue. It's from my perspective with the finance background, you look at all kinds of things and boring things on the finance side from like inflation and inflation rates and what had changed in the last 30 years and how the gold was detached from the dollar and what has that done to our economy? What has that done to the disparity between, we look, there's so many numbers that go through my head when I look at this, because, and it's to sit here and like draw it out on a board and say, this is connected to this is connected to this is connected to this. But all of that, I know how we got there, and that's how do you unravel this thing. But we end up here, which is I'm spending way too much on my education. I don't know what I'm going to do. Are there jobs out there? I don't. Are they even real jobs? Because there's like no notice whatsoever. And can I get a house? I mean, these are just like real anxiety questions for this generation.
And it is so interesting that, I mean, I'm so insightful that they are thinking about the economy, because when I was her age, that never even crossed my mind.
Right.
And so the fact that it is staring them in the face, that shows that there is a true problem.
Yeah.
Shout out to the parents, though, taking the kids back in, because in 2020, my parents just bought a new house and they're like, we're empty nesters. And then 3 out of the 4 of us moved back into their house. And they're like, what's happening right now?
This is not supposed to, this is not in the rule book.
This wasn't in the plan. But specifically for Mahi, Leanna and I got to talk with her a little bit. She has an undergraduate degree, but she couldn't find a job in whatever she studied. I don't recall what that was. So she decided to go back to university to get her nursing license or degree or whatever it's called. And because that was a surefire way to get a job. We always need nurses. And that makes me sad that she felt like she had to go back. It's like you think you're going to go to college and get the freedom to get jobs and choose. And it's like people are getting their hands tied further.
Well, I think it's important that there's this unsaid thinking. We've talked about this unsaid peer pressure about putting kids through college to find themselves. And it's peer pressure on the parents, peer pressure on the kids to go do this because we think that's the best solution. There's another unwritten rule that's not really spoken out. It's like, or assumption, and you've said this, Leon, is like, I go to university, I go the 4 years, and the unsaid contract is I get a job at the end of that. when
It's an IOU.
exactly, it's an IOU for a degree's an IOU for a job. And whenever they get this, I got this part, where's my IOU? And they're running into like, are there really any jobs out there? Like that's not so important to like step back, step on the mountain and look down and say, okay, what does this picture look like? Is this a true statement that I'm believing? Do I have to go down this path? And if I go down this path, what are the risks I'm taking? What are the risks? Like any business owner, anybody who's going to go future and look at something for the future, they're going to analyze the risks that they see and look at those with open eyes, not just make assumptions. Because if you make assumptions, you're going to fail, right? And so I think that's the whole societal question is, are we asking the right questions when it comes to what are my skills going forward? What do I want to skill at? And what is that going to produce for me? And are there jobs? And go back to my roots in financial planning, you start with the end in mind, which is like every time a client comes in, it's like, what do you want to do? What kind of retirement do you want to have? What kind of goals do you want to have? We always picture the future and then work backwards. I don't think that question is asked enough when it comes to like career. Like she figured out at some point that nursing now has a lot of need. Why don't I go skill there? But that could have been a question that she could have asked at the very beginning. And so I think from that standpoint, one of the things that we're approaching is start with the end in mind, which is the employers. Like, what do the employers need? And then say, what kind of skills do they need? And then work backwards through this university systems and through that messaging to get back to the student and say, here's the quickest path to get to that job. And that's a much more efficient process, which is what you work with is efficiency, to not take on so much debt, reduce anxiety, and get to an end result. So anyway, those are my 2 cents. Anybody else want to chime in on this?
I do have some sympathy.
Oh, not a lot.
Or not a lot.
Just a little.
For the boomers, though. It's like...
Isn't that a boomer podcast? No, go ahead.
Well, but it's like, with perhaps the exception of the Industrial Revolution, which saw a very sudden, massive restructuring of society around, sort of modern production in some extent, the rate of technology was almost always slower than the rate of raising children. So if you were a plowman and you plowed fields, there was a good chance that your son would make a half-decent living that way. And if they weren't, you would say, son, don't go into it. And you'd probably retire. Wouldn't be a great retirement, but you'd be comfortable enough. And you'd encourage your son to go into something else. And that was how we functioned as an entire species for all of time. Our environment and the opportunity around us changed slowly. And so you could look to what your parents did. And if they had decent opportunity, copy them. And that was what, my father said to me was go get a degree. Because if you've got a chance, get it. Because all these other guys that did it, they did really well for themselves. And little did we know that everyone would do it. And then the value of that degree is not diluted per se, but certainly if you're no longer instantly hiring people that have degrees, right? It was only 10 years ago that Facebook was hiring every single Stanford computer science major they could get their hands on. It really was an IOU. You showed up with a degree, they gave you the computer and the badge. We'll find a job for you, go, And now they don't do that. Now every single big tech company tests in because the value of that has changed for whatever reason. And so there is this bold new world, right? Where you don't know what tomorrow is coming. It won't look like today and it won't look like yesterday either. And nobody knows, not the employers, not the government. No one has any idea what the world will look like in 3 years or 3 years after that. And the only thing you can really do is pivot, I think, the entire society really to a lifelong learning model and to a skills-based learning model. That's all you can do. But that's going to take a lot of time for our education system to catch up because all these institutions, the status quo is never fast to change. It just can't be, right? Because entire livelihoods and industries are pegged to them. You can't you can just rip that out, but it gets spicy. It's spicy time. So I don't know. That's just kind of some thoughts from me there. And it's just tough. I don't have good answers. And that's part of why, again, part of the pain that Founding Up is trying to help with. It's like, man, what can you do in 5 years? What can you recommend?
Well, and something I thought of as she was talking is she looking at going to nursing school versus getting a $30,000 a year job right out of college? Is this more beneficial? Does this look cheaper from the outset versus $30,000, having a roommate, getting an apartment, like getting on with the path, but also serving your time. I mean, we've all taken those. You got to start somewhere. So is that the hesitation that they don't want to start somewhere because they feel like they're entitled? I don't want to say entitled, but entitled to more.
Right.
Thoughts?
I mean, I would say social media certainly promotes an image of what life should be like and what success feels like. I mean, but I also will say that the minimum wage, in Austin at least, doesn't cover rent. So you can put all the time in the world into those kind of jobs, and you'll get nowhere, and you'll never get a pay raise in all reasonableness. Like employer, there's no loyalty, and the employer's not going to lift you up. They're just going to fire you as soon as they can. So I don't know. I think in my experience, Gen Z are very savvy, and they don't mind grinding it out, but there has to be a clear path for them to succeed. Versus a lot of jobs these days can be really tough because there is no way out. And you're not retiring, you're not saving a 401k. You're not doing. Suddenly you're 49, you have zero money to retire on, and you're like, oh.
I did want to add a nugget. Retirement is a relatively
novel
new thing, right? The boomer generation is actually the first generation that actually has experienced a true retirement. Before
you lived 5 years and died, right?
Before I think it was 1930 when Social Security came out, and it was because all the boomers were coming back from war and everything else. There was this 25. It was right after the Great Depression. This 25% of the workforce was unemployed, and so how do you fix that? And so governments come up with Social Security to get some of the older people out, get some of the newer people in, and that was what created the Social Security issue or idea, insurance.
Created the concept of
but
retirement.
Before then, it was like you work till you die. It was just that you just stay. This is what you do, and so this retirement problem has only been 100 years at most, and so now.
So is retirement important to Gen Zers?
So here's another question to answer that question. I think that having a 21-year-old myself, it is so far out there, right? You're in this instant. I got to worry about today. Like, can I get rent? That's what I'm more worried about. So it's what are the 5 levels of concern? I forget what they're called, but essentially,
the needs pyramid.
Yeah, and so that's so far out there, retirement that's not something you think about. And I also see that, and I'm not obviously answering for everybody, but this is kind of what I've seen in our discussions. It's how do we achieve these first few things first? Because those are the bigger problems. What I have noticed in discussions is the hope that was once there for the hope that I had and our generation, to create the future. The world is your oyster, that kind of thing. That's no longer as prominent. It is no longer as prominent as the world is my oyster. It is because of social media and all the world's problems are in your lap that it's I'm hearing about global warming, and we had in our first episode, global warming and the war and
NATO.
I never looked at the news when I was a kid. That was my neighbor's friend that would look at the news at 6 o'clock, and he would tell us what's going on.
Well, funny enough, my son and I were at dinner on Tuesday night, and of course, the news was on. We're sitting there eating, and it's the geyser that explodes, as well as the whale that fell on the boat or jumped on the boat. Have y'all seen that?
No.
And so our dinner conversation was, would you rather have been walking across that boardwalk when the geyser blew, or would you have rather been on the boat that the whale jumped on? And you're just like,
would you rather fight a horse-sized duck?
But these are 2 things that actually happened on a Tuesday.
Right.
And it's straight on the news.
Right.
So, yeah, I can see where they get a little.
Yeah. So to go back to answer your question, I just don't think that's even within it'll eventually be addressed. But right now it's, how do I get that job? I'm supposed to be doing this, what I've been told. I go do this stuff. I'm supposed to get a job. It didn't happen. Is that fake? That's what she's saying. Is that fake?
Right.
Are the jobs out there? Well, I know I've got to go do this. So to me, it didn't sound like that choice of go grind it out. It sounded like what's available. It's more of that. It's more of a needs-based thinking versus abundance mentality.
Right.
It sounds
I like
good.
that question though, Holly. Like I want to ask my little brother who's 23. He's Gen Z. But I think what it boils down to is retirement looks different for everybody.
Right.
Like for boomers, it's work, then stop and chill and, I don't know, golf or watch TV all day. I don't know what it looks like for them, but that's what it seems like. Work and then stop work. Whereas Gen Z is a lot better at balancing, and they're a lot better at leaning into, I need a me day today. I need a mental health day today. So they're almost like sprinkling in their retirement throughout their whole lives.
That's a great
what I mean?
illustration.
I
Yeah.
just watched, and I'm not sure if Lindsay Sterling is Gen Z or not, because I don't. But went to a concert last night, and amazing. I didn't know what to expect. I like her music because I'm not put it on while I'm working. I think it's great focus music. And I knew she was coming into town. I was like, let's go do that. Go check it out. It's like a Cirque du Soleil show. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciated about her, and there's a lot of youth in the audience, a lot of Gen Z as well as paying attention to, is that her positive message to the audience. First of all, she's like, y'all didn't know this, but proceeds of all your tickets, a big portion of it is going to nonprofit, and it's to pay off medical bills. They're doing some sort of cruise tour. 100% of those tickets are going to that. So like that movement. The other thing that she did, she talked about her own anxiety going on stage and the things that she used to face, a few years ago, and how some person gifted her a breathwork class and she did that and it changed her life. So she's sending that message out. So one of her songs, she said, everybody close your eyes, and then we did breathwork during the concert.
That's so cool.
And by closing the eyes, she pointed all the lights at the audience. And just at the very end of the breath work, she like flashed all these lights. And so it just like this wonderful show in your own head. I was like, this is so cool. But the positive messaging that's being put out there by her. And so to your point is there is more consciousness about self-care, self-awareness, talking vulnerable about here's what happens to me and everybody has it. And then the rest of the show, and I highly recommend go seeing it. But there's I think it was Alan Watts that was speaking in between sets, and it was all positive messaging about, I forget the term. There's a certain Japanese art where pottery that's broken together comes back together with
I know
gold.
exactly what you're talking about.
And he talked about that, which really I had heard about this before. I thought it starts with a K, but he said that essentially once that pottery is put back together with gold, it's stronger than it was ever before. And so, the analogy to broken lives and how you can become stronger and go through that and become stronger to that. So all this positive messaging was happening, and I was just blown away by that performance. And now I have I loved her before, just the music, but as a person, I'm like much respect because you're doing the right thing for
That's so
the
cool.
community. So anyway, if you guys get a chance to see her, highly recommend go doing it. I think that
We were not paid for that endorsement, ladies and gentlemen.
But Lindsay, if you want to come on the show,
Yeah.
I want to hear about your path.
Can
and
we?
I want to hear about your mentorship to get you where you need to go. So
And in post, we'll find out what the name of that Japanese pottery breaking is and put it on screen.
thank you. Yes, we'll do that. And that's all the time we've got today, folks. I really enjoyed the visit.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
did too.
Thank
Y'all
you
are
so
great.
much, Holly.
Loved it.
And that concludes another episode of Uncharted, Your Sidekick for Life. A big thank you to Holly Deshields for joining us today and sharing her incredible story and drive. Holly's insights into the world of lobbying and politics have been truly enlightening. If you would like to participate as a Gen Z guest or a mentor, visit our site at foundingup.com or check out the show notes. Remember, folks, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining the Founding Up and Uncharted teams. Until next time, keep exploring the uncharted.